Owning a family home is the ultimate American dream. Whether it's the home where you raised your family or the cottage on the Cape that's been in your family for generations, it's more than just real estate. It's the place where your grandkids learn to swim, where you host the family for Thanksgiving. It's part of your family story, but there's a massive legal hole that most families don't see until they're already falling through it. The very asset you built to bring your family together can actually become the very thing that tears it apart. You're probably sitting there thinking, I want my kids and grandkids to always have a place to gather, so I'll just leave it to all of them together and they can share it. Actually, when you leave a house informally to the family, you aren't leaving a gift, you're leaving a decades-long issue for them to deal with. When you leave things loose and communal, you are creating a power vacuum. And in a power vacuum, the most responsible people get punished, while the least responsible people get a free ride. But here's the catch. The legal nightmare doesn't start the day that you pass away. It starts years later when the silent groundwork that you failed to do finally crumbles away. I'm going to show you exactly why the family house concept is a myth that destroys legacies. And more importantly, I'm going to give you the blueprint for a resilient structure that actually survives generations. Let's talk about the reality of a house where everyone is welcome. In a perfect world, everyone would show up for a weekend, clean up after themselves, and chip in for groceries. But we don't live in a perfect world. The reason this works so poorly for most families is that without a clear legal decision maker, authority usually falls on the loudest or bossiest person in the room by default. They become the informal manager, deciding who gets to stay in which room and who is invited to the family dinner. This creates immediate, deep-seated resentment among the rest of the family. And you're probably thinking, my family's different. We get along. We'd never fight over a house. Actually, property changes people. Once you add $1 million asset into the mix, you start seeing the exploitation trap. This is where one family member decides to move in because they're having a hard time, but then they never leave. They don't pay rent, they don't clean the gutters, and they treat the family heirloom like a personal apartment. When it's a family house, who has the authority to tell them to leave? No one. You end up in a situation where the family is literally afraid to visit their own home because of a difficult cousin that's effectively taken over. But that's not even the most interesting part. While your family is arguing about who left the dishes in the sink, there is a much bigger threat quietly building in the background. A house doesn't take care of itself. Every 20 years, it needs a new roof. After a hard winter, it needs new siding. The plumbing, it gets old. The systems wear out. Maintenance is constant, but when the house has 10 or 20 heirs on the title, nobody is clearly in charge. And when nobody is clearly in charge, nothing gets done. Think about what that actually means in practice. A contractor shows up to fix a leak. Someone has to sign the contract. Someone has to be responsible for the bill. When the title is a tangled mess of cousins spread across 3 states, that conversation gets complicated very quickly. And a lot of contractors and insurance companies simply don't want to deal with it. We also need to talk about what I see most often in these situations. The person who I call the tired payer. In almost every family house situation, there's one person, usually the most responsible sibling, who quietly takes it upon themselves to keep the lights on. They pay the property taxes because they don't want the town to put a lien on the property. They pay the insurance because they don't want a fire to wipe out what's left of the family's legacy. But after 5 or 10 years of paying out of their own pocket while their siblings use the house for free, that person gets tired. They're asking for contributions and they get met with, well, I never asked you to pay for that. Or, I live out of state, why should I pay for a house I only see once a year? The reason this is so dangerous is that when the tired payer finally stops writing the checks, the house goes into a tax foreclosure. The town can seize the property and sell it to the highest bidder just to recoup the taxes. Actually, the town doesn't care who you are or that you just need a break. They want their money, and they'll take the house to get it. But it gets even more complicated. As property passes through generations without formal probate or deed transfers, we enter the heir's property dilemma. Ownership becomes increasingly diluted. You start with 4 children, then 12 grandchildren, then 30 great-grandchildren. Once you reach that level of dilution, one house is a ticking time bomb for 2 major reasons: gentrification and forced sales. You might be sitting there thinking, our house isn't that valuable, so no one would bother us. Actually, in areas that are growing, especially on the South Shore and in Massachusetts, a house bought for $60,000 decades ago might be worth well over $800,000 now. The mistake most families make is that they don't realize that an outside investor can find one distant heir, maybe it's a cousin who's struggling with debt, and offer them $20,000 for their share of the house. When that investor buys that small share, they become a co-owner. And they don't want a vacation there. They'll immediately file a partition action in court to force a sale of the entire property. The court will order the house to be sold at auction, and the family is kicked out, and the investor walks away with a profit. So if leaving it loose is a disaster, how do you actually protect a family legacy? We have to move away from family house thinking toward more resilient legal structures. Instead of figuring it out as we go, we need a professional blueprint. The first option is a single owner strategy. The reason this works is clarity. You leave the house to one responsible individual. You can leave a moral request, not a legal requirement, that they keep it open to the rest of the family. But you name one person who is legally responsible for the taxes, the repairs, and the rules. It removes the power vacuum instantly. But if you truly want it to be a communal asset, you must use the LLC or trust model. When you transfer the property to a formal entity, you are creating a shield. You name a manager or a trustee who has legal authority to sign contracts, hire contractors, and more importantly, enforce the family house rules. Once you have the structure, you can implement formal agreements. You don't just let people stay, you have actual leases in place, even for family. This provides a clear process for contribution and, if necessary, a legal path for eviction if someone is exploiting the property. And finally, you establish a reserve fund. The truth is, you can't run a legacy on hope. You require heirs to contribute small manageable amounts, maybe $25 or $50 a month, into a dedicated account. When the property taxes come due or the roof leaks in the middle of a blizzard, the money is there. You don't have to go hat in hand to 10 different cousins who are all short on cash this month. We have to change the concept of a family house as we know it. The idea that things just work out because we are family is a lie that leads to foreclosure and feuds. We have to come up with better, more resilient structures to manage our family properties into the future. When you build the right shield today, you aren't just saving money, you're saving the place where your family's best memories happen. The truth is, the state isn't going to tell you how to protect your assets. That's your responsibility. But you don't have to navigate the complicated situation alone. If you have a family house that is currently in legal limbo, or if you're planning to leave your home to the next generation, don't wait for the tax man to knock or for an investor to buy out a distant cousin. Once you understand the rules of the game, you can finally stop worrying about the score. Leave a comment below with your family house stories. I read all of them. Or visit our website to schedule a free strategic consultation with somebody on my team. Let's get your silent groundwork done today before the next storm hits. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.